Okay, well, it's 3:01. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Randall Baxter. I'm the president of Asset Positioning Services. And we've got a pretty heavy conversation to do today. It's not going to be marketing or anything like that. It's going to be, we're going to discuss some of the different types of trusts that are on the market and the reasons they're used. I'm going to compare them to what we have to sell, and what the role of our contract is in the marketplace. And I think it really needs to be cleared up. A lot of you out there are working really, really hard, and I want you to be sure that you understand what your product is that you're selling, and that's where we're going to go. So uh, let's just get started. One thing I want to say is, of all the different types of trusts that you should be aware of in your journey, the trusts that are available through family estate docs is probably the most needed, but it's not the only one. So, and what has happened to middle America is the middle America has gone without proper estate planning for ever since this country was started. And there's been different ways to do it. And we're going to talk about some of that, but we're just going to clear up a couple of things here. Okay, so uh, I want you to be aware of all the different types of trusts, and there's no way I can cover them all, and there's no way we can spend a lot of time in detail. I'm just going to kind of give you the review light version today. And then if you want to take some notes or write down some of the names of some of these trusts and you need information, I can get it to you. You also need to know that family estate docs can be amended to make some of this stuff work. It's not built in straight, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit too. But your family estate docs software is the most universal and the most advantageous and the most qualified to fit the American family, American middle class family. So if Donald Trump is your client, it's probably not the right trust. Okay, if some country music star that's going to marry a football player and makes a gazillion dollars every time she wakes up, that's probably not the right trust. But what I think you'd find out is a lot of these famous country music stars and sports people and famous people die and don't have a trust at all. And you read about it all the time. So anyway, let's go on to the journey here. So first thing I want y'all to know, when I try to teach you all, hey, I think you would benefit from a conversation with me about your current estate plan. If you're going to be that person that's going in and qualifying suspects, then you need to consider what I'm about to say here. Who should consider a trust? Well, people with accumulated assets who want to ensure how their assets are distributed after death to support the people you love in the future. That's probably the broadest avatar. So that's a bunch of people. And they're everywhere. And when people say, hey, I don't have anybody to see, that's why I tell them just look out the window. Walk down the street. So anyway, there's another reason. Also, they want to minimize the amount of their money that's lost through estate and gift taxes. Well, those people usually have a CPA or a tax attorney, or maybe have won the lottery and accumulated a lot of wealth. And right now, that's probably over the 15 to 20 million bracket in assets. And that's why when I ask you to do page 3 on the confidential, that's why we do ballpark. You want to find out, is the trust that you're about to offer appropriate? And you need to know that. And if you find out in advance, you know whether to offer it or not. That's why I designed it the way I designed it, and that's why I placed the page 3 in there after we find out the health questions, after we do the income analysis, and after we find out what their long-term care plans are, and after we find out what their real estate is. So other people that need trusts, or trusts also help your family avoid the costs and delays of receiving the money they're entitled to because of a lengthy probate court process. I had a case yesterday. It looks like two folks are going to wind up in a courtroom because they hate each other, and even though their mother did what was right, their hatred is to feed that hatred is more desired than the solution of what their mom wanted. It's the hatred that pushes, and it's the the, the motivation for revenge uh, at the death of a parent. So, you're not always going to do a trust that's going to go smooth, even though you might have had that trust for 15, 20 years and done every change that you want to. When that person passes away, uh, the children still might fight over it, but the trust is still going to win. The trust is going to be supported by if it's properly witnessed and if it's properly notarized, no judge is going to rule against these documents. And you need to be aware of that. So anyway, a lot of people are under false pretense that trusts are only for very wealthy people. This couldn't be further from the truth. Trusts can protect your legacy and your loved ones. I don't care to tell you, my mom wanted her 10 acres of her farm that she was born on that she paid for with her war bonds from working at Oak Ridge to build the atomic bomb, and got the poison dust all in her lungs, and it killed her. Wanted to be sure that her children and her grandchildren had a place to go to gather for holidays and stuff like that. So when she set up her trust, that's what she wanted to do. Anyway, anyone who's an adult, owns property, has a dependent, or who has accumulated assets. Now, I put $25,000 in here. Some states say 100, some states say 160. And you need to find out what your state says. But sometimes it's not what the state says, it's what the person who owns the estate says they want to do. So it's not always because it's a big estate plan. So deciding what type of trust you need is really the only thing left to do. And what I'm about to show you should help, because I want you to realize how powerful the document is that we're representing. Because our trusts have lots of the traits and lots of the abilities for these individual traits are built right in. So some people might go out and do a trust for a disabled child and have that trust just set up just for disabled children. But you've got to trust that if there is a disabled child, all those provisions kick in. It's already built in. So you're representing a very good product for middle-class America. And another misconception that it's only for wealthy people. However, essentially everyone can benefit from learning how wills and trusts can carry out your or their wishes upon your or their death. A revocable trust is designed to carry out your wishes. And it becomes irrevocable when you die. So one valuable estate planning tool is a trust, which is an arrangement in which a person gives property to an entity to be held for a beneficiary. Now, we still haven't gone into the different types of trust yet, because we're talking about the product that you have. So what you've got besides your living will and your advanced care directives and your power of attorney for healthcare and your power of attorney for finance and your pour over will, you also have a living trust. And a lot of people call their trust the Joe Smith Living Trust, dated whatever day. Some people want to call it the JS Living Trust to keep privacy in there. And a lot of y'all have asked me these privacy questions. Some people want their trust to be private, so they might call it the Mickey Mouse Trust, and that's okay. Okay, they can call it the Yabba Dabba Doo Trust or the Bazinga Trust. They can call it anything they want to, because the name of the trust identifies the trust, but then you say who the grantors are, and if the grantor is John Smith, it doesn't matter what he names his trust. So those of you who are struggling with how to name a trust, let it go. And if someone doesn't want their name on the trust, that's okay. Tell them it's the Big Red Barn Trust. Whatever they want to call it. But it's created during a person's lifetime and appoints a trustee to manage that person's assets for an eventual beneficiary. Eventual beneficiary. The beneficiary has no control over the assets and can lose their position because the trust is revocable. That's not true in all cases. But our revocable trusts, you got to remember, become irrevocable at the death of the grantors. So living trusts make it easy to transfer assets after death without having to go through probate. That's all it is. That's just what it does. Okay, somebody said, hey, we're going to be involved in this process for 2 or 3 years. And I looked at them and I said, no, let's wrap it up by February 28th. And they looked at me and like, what do you mean? And I said, well, all we got to do is a couple of quitclaim deeds, 4 of them, and file some death claims and get that money in the bank and follow the wishes and pay the children, the grandchildren, what grandma bequeathed to them, and then split the rest of the money. And the answer for one of those people was, oh, I need a lawyer for that. And I said, okay, but you don't need a lawyer for that. And all you're going to do is throw your money away. But the reason they wanted a lawyer was because of hatred, not because of what their mom did. So just remember, and you don't know what the children are going to be. Even if you develop a super duper trust and a good relationship with somebody when they pass away, you don't know what's going to come in the door, folks. So be aware of that. But your trust is good. Your documents are good. You did not write the document. You did not practice law. All you did was facilitate the answers to the questions that the attorney written software asks you to produce. You're not practicing law when you do that. So anyway, so a revocable trust, meanwhile, a revocable trust can be changed or canceled by the grantor, and the trust income earned goes to the grantor. This trust gives more flexibility to the grantor until the property is eventually transferred to beneficiaries upon death. Now, I said the word grantor several times there, but I could have also said trustor or settlor. Different states have different names for the same thing. In Tennessee, a lot of times they'll call you a settler. Okay. Other states will call you a grantor. Other states will call you a trustor. It's all the same. So the next thing I want to talk to you about, and since we're breaking things down here, is there's a difference between a revocable trust that becomes irrevocable. It's different from an irrevocable trust. And I've done lots of irrevocable trusts through attorneys for the veteran planning that we did many years ago. An irrevocable trust, when people hear the word irrevocable, it scares them. And an irrevocable trust cannot be changed unless you design it to be changed inside the document. So if you just do an irrevocable trust that says you can't pull the money out until this child is 30, that's written in stone. But if you say this is an irrevocable trust and you can't pull the money out till this child is 30 unless they meet these conditions, then a trap door falls out of the bottom of it and all the cash rolls out and goes to the child to pay for the care of the child. But that's still irrevocable. Okay, so don't be afraid of the word irrevocable. It's all in the design. So people often set up these trusts to save on taxes because irrevocable trusts must remove incidents of ownership and assets from the grantor's taxable estate. Well, that's what happens when you have a revocable trust and somebody dies. You have to go get a tax number, an EIN number. So all of a sudden, those assets aren't in the name of the deceased person's Social Security anymore, the Social Security number. It now has its own tax number, its own entity. Well, a grantor can give the asset away while they're alive into an irrevocable trust, and to transfer ownership, when they put that asset into that trust gets its own tax number. And that's the point. When it crosses that line from one Social Security number to an EIN number, that's the day to transfer. And sometimes in order to get Medicaid or veterans benefits, they measure it by 3 or 5 years from the date of transfer. Okay. You don't have to deal with that until your client passes away. And then whatever was in that revocable trust becomes irrevocable. It has to have its own tax number. The asset has been transferred from the estate of the deceased person into the trust of that deceased person, and has a different tax number because it's going to go on for a while after the person who's deceased has passed away, and it could go on for up to 21 years after the last surviving person in the trust passes away. Okay, so and don't get scared of that. Just understand that there's a revocable trust and there's some irrevocability in the revocable trust, but there's also an irrevocable trust that is written in stone the day it's closed and funded. And we have funded a lot of irrevocable trusts, and we did that to get the asset out of the estate while the grantor was alive. That's not the product you're selling. The product you're selling, when they put things into revocable trust, it never leaves their estate because all the tax reports go on their Social Security number, even though they have a revocable trust. So don't confuse the two, and don't try to represent one as being the other. So anyway, there's also a charitable trust. And if you want a portion of your estate to support nonprofit causes you care about, then consider setting up a charitable trust. This trust holds assets until they are distributed to charities and offers both valuable tax breaks and opportunities to make a real difference in the world. You are taking that asset out of your Social Security number and putting it into a different trust. And you're making it irrevocable. And the only person that can deny that benefit when there's a death is the beneficiary. Nobody else can change it. You can do charitable donations inside your revocable trust, but you won't get the tax advantages. You won't get the, you won't get the set in stone, but you probably won't get the recognition if that's what you're looking for in a charitable trust. You are not selling charitable trusts, but someone can leave a portion of their assets in a bequeath to a charity and get the appropriate tax deductions for their estate after they die. So your revocable trust can be used for charity, but it's not taking it out of your estate today. It's taken like a charitable trust would do. Okay, so be sure that you understand that. And let's go on. The next thing is, and I've had a couple questions about this week. A revocable trust doesn't protect anybody from a lawsuit. A revocable trust doesn't protect anybody from Medicaid. A revocable trust sets the rules for distribution of the asset at death and picks the people to represent you if you become disabled and can't represent yourself. That, my friends, is middle America. That's where you want to focus your marketing, because middle America, well, I will tell you this, I read this a couple years ago, so the numbers might not be straight, but if you have $300,000, you are in the top 3% of all people in the whole world. That's, that's not much money. It's a lot of money, but it's not much money. It's funny how it can be both. But at middle America, and most of the trusts that I do are between $2 and $5 million. Sometimes they're $1 million. Sometimes they're $600,000. Rarely do I run into an estate plan that's over $10 million? Rarely. Now, that doesn't mean they're not out there. That doesn't mean that they don't need an attorney. And you know, when you come in and tell somebody that they need a certain kind of trust, you're kind of borderline in practicing law. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say this is what you need. But you're safe on the revocable side if what they're wanting to do is distribute their assets when they die and name the people who are going to protect them when they get disabled or too sick to defend for themselves. So just, you know, be sure that that's what you're doing. If you're out there telling people that this trust will do asset protection or anything like that, you're doing wrong. You know, you are being negligent. So don't do that. Understand what you got to sell. We're going to look at that here in a minute. So anyway, then there's also an AB trust. Now this is where you start crossing the line between tax law and protecting estates from taxes. And our trust at Family Estate Docs will do an AB trust. And if you don't understand it, there's a little blue ball on there with a question mark that'll explain it to you. But I'm going to be honest with you. If you think you're getting close to an AB trust, those people more than likely have an accountant. And maybe you might need to talk to that accountant before you make that AB trust recommendation. It used to be when the state tax law was down to 5 million or down to 1 million, everybody did an AB trust. But when they moved it up to 15 or 18 million, people quit doing the AB trust and they just did the standard trust. If the estate tax law drops like it is predicted to drop, a lot of the standard trusts will need to be restated and converted to AB trusts. And you will be a hero when you go in and do that. And your software will do that for them, or they can do it on their own if they want to. So you need to understand the AB trust. You know, an AB trust is similar to a joint trust. It's used to minimize estate taxes by married couples, not for people not married. The trust is named AB because it splits into two trusts upon the first member's passing. Dad died. Now, a lot of trusts, they don't call them AB. They call them HWs because they call them husband-wife, but that's no longer appropriate because there's lots of wife-wives or husband-husbands. But you can still do an AB trust if you're legally married. It doesn't say anything about sex. It says only are you married. So the A trust becomes the survivor's trust. So if dad passed away, the A trust becomes mom's trust. The B trust is the person who passed away. It's an effective tactic for minimizing a tax consequence because the first spouse's death would not trigger any estate taxes. Now think about this because you may get into a point where you need an AB trust. Dad died and we're going to take 1/2 of that estate. And we're going to put it in an irrevocable bypass trust. So let's say the estate's worth $15 million and let's say it's worth $20 million and the estate tax law says $15 million and dad dies and they've got a $15 million estate. They can take $7,500,000 out of their estate and put it into an irrevocable bypass trust. What's that word? Did you see that word irrevocable? Remember what we said about irrevocable? Irrevocable's got to have tax number. So all of a sudden it took that $15 million estate and reduced it into two $7,500,000 estates. The remaining amount would transfer to the survivor's trust A, and that way it would not be taxed until his or her passing. Okay, so if you're going to do an AB trust, talk to their tax planner. Just make the phone call. All right. Enough of that. There's also a Q-tip trust, and Q-tip is a qualified terminal interest property trust. Are used to ensure that income from the trust would be paid to a survivor spouse, but the remaining funds would be held in the original trust until the second spouse passes. At that point, whatever is left would be paid to beneficiaries. What kind of family tree would you draw that you might want a Q-tip trust? And think hard about it, because it might be second marriage with dad bringing a whole bunch of assets to the marriage and mom not bringing many assets to the marriage, and dad having children that he brought to the marriage that they didn't have in between them, and he wants his children to have those assets, but he wants to be sure those assets are there for his new wife until she dies. If that's the situation you run into, you need to call me. We'll call Frank and we'll get the right wording put into your trust. Okay, so people call me all the time. What do we do here? What do we do there? Well, if you draw the family tree first and send me the family tree and explain it to me what they want to do, we can make it happen. I think it's $200 for each change you make inside those revocable trusts from Estate Docs Pro. Okay, so then they'll go in and trigger the printing of that change. Okay, so just be aware of each. Remember when I say, hey, I'll be a better advisor if I understand your family dynamics? Can you see now why I say draw that family tree? So you understand the family dynamics. I knew that the case I've been working on this week was going to be ugly, just because there's not a lot of love in that family. But they wouldn't qualify for a Q-tip trust because mom was a widow for many, many, many years ago. She had a revocable trust. Okay, so next thing is a special needs trust, and I put that puzzle in there on purpose. Special needs trust can be created for the benefit of a physically or mentally disabled person under the age of 65 who will need lifelong care. Now, that's an avatar. And all you have to do is run into somebody who has a person in their life that has a physical or mentally disabled person under the age of 65 who will need lifelong care. If you run into that person, you know what you ought to say to them? Hey, I think you would benefit from a conversation with me about your current estate plan. Your trust that you sell has got that built in, and all the trustee has to do is decide that it's needed. It's already there. But there are many, many people who set up special needs trusts just for an individual child, and that's okay. But when they do that, a lot of times they transfer that asset out of their estate. So what's that make it? A new tax number, and the money comes out of their estate, and they might do it for estate planning purposes. At the same time, I think that the best way to fund a special needs trust is with life insurance policy, because if you fund it with an IRA, then that child has to pay income tax on that money. But if you took the RMD from that IRA and bought a big life insurance policy and put that money in the trust for that child will never have to pay tax on the original principal. So a lot of people, if they have a disabled child, it's a great idea to have a separate trust and put a life insurance policy in it, or to have a special needs provision in your trust, which already exists. It's in there, and fund it with a life insurance policy under a bequeath. So that money doesn't go to pay all the bills or anything like that. So the trustee would have to put that life insurance proceeds into the special needs provisions of the trust. So you don't have to back down on your document. You've got a good, strong document that has many aspects of other kinds of trust built into it. And then there's the spendthrift trust. And it could be that I won't get into politics, but a very well-known son of a very well-known politician in our country may have some spendthrift problems because of his cocaine habits and his uh, lust for wild women and his disregard for the cost of anything. So that's just an example, but there's lots of people running around like that don't have multimillionaire parents, that if you give them $100 bill in the morning, they will not have any of that money by lunchtime. It'll be gone. Okay. You have a trust that sets it up that says that if the trustee determines that a person inside the family needs the protection of the spendthrift clause inside the revocable trust that you sold them, the trustee can say that and enact it and let that person have the benefit of the money without ever taking possession of it. Now, do we need to think about that again? You get the benefit of the money without taking possession of it. So I might walk into the trustee and go, "Hey, I need $1,000 to pay my rent." And the trustee says, "Well, I know that last month your rent was $800. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay your rent for you. Just tell the landlord to give you a receipt for the amount of that rent." And that way you've thwarted the spendthrift from lying to you. Just for that the spendthrift trust becomes a benefit for his health and his education and his welfare, not for his fun and his expenses on wine, women, and song, or the fact that maybe he's such a good person. As soon as he gets $100, he goes down there and puts $10 in the cups of several beggars. And maybe he doesn't know any better or can't defend himself. He just that's what he does with his money. If the trustee thinks that's what he's going to do, then the trustee can say, "I'm sorry, you can't have that money. This money is here for your health, your education, and your welfare, and what you're doing with it is not benefiting your health and your education and your welfare. I don't have to give it to you because that's what the trust says." Now, that's a good thing. The next kind of trust that we might want to be looking at is a credit shelter trust. Well, the credit shelter trust is a type of trust that helps married couples reduce their estate taxes. Now, what's that mean? That means that you did page 3 and you found out that they had over maybe $15 million. See, you did part 3 of the family tree asset positioning go-to first interview, and you immediately saw that maybe the revocable trust is not the right option. And you have to have the good sense to know what your trust will do and what it will not do. And I promise you'll get in trouble if you start making it up as you go. Don't do that. So you might see a credit shelter trust that helps married couples reduce their estate taxes by taking advantage of all available federal and state exemptions. It's most relevant for multi-million-dollar estates and when each spouse has sizable wealth. Now that's different from the rich man we talked about a few minutes ago that married a woman that didn't have any assets. And he needed a different type of trust, didn't he? But if if the music singer marries the football player, then it may be that they need a credit shelter trust because they're both loaded. And if you take two loaded estates, and loaded meaning lots of assets, and put them together, you've just created a big estate tax problem. So maybe there's some estate tax planning that they might want to do before they get married at the Super Bowl. I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm sorry, that's just a rumor I started. But anyway, okay. here's what I need you to know. I need you to understand your end user license agreement. And here's what I'm finding out. Folks, you all haven't read it. It's got little print and it's a big page. It's a contract. It says what your responsibilities are as a representative of Family Estate Docs. Read that, but the thing that I want you to know, especially, is what is the client's end user agreement? What's the client agreeing to? This is where you stay out of trouble. If you're not careful, you walk into a hornet's nest and you get stung and you won't deserve it. And you'll get bullied and pushed around. But you will not get bullied and pushed around if you understand what you're selling. So I'm going to try here, Lisa. You might have to coach me through it, but I'm going to stop my screen share a minute, and that's kind of scary.
Okay, so just click on change share, the green button, change share.
The green button.
Screen share, change share.
I don't see change share. I see new share.
New share, and then select the window, the link.
Okay. So I'm going to do a new share.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to open up Family Estate Docs.
There, you've got it. I can see it.
Okay. This is in your software. It's in my software. It's in everybody's software. And if you don't read it, you won't understand what you're selling. Then you're going to get accused of practicing law. And you shouldn't, because it hurts your feelings and you don't deserve that, because you're doing nothing but good for people. So just be careful. You need to read it. And you need to realize that what you're selling is you're granting that person a license to do their own estate plan, and you are basically serving as a coach. And people don't read their end user agreement. Just like you might not have read your end user agreement yet. But what we're saying is we're not selling you any products. We're selling you a license to do your own. And if you want the person that's going to help you get this license to coach you through it, they've been trained and they will help you generate the answers to your questions. They'll help you come to the conclusion of what those answers should be. That's why you draw the family tree. That's why you ask the question, hey, you're on a table in the hospital tonight. You're in a coma and the doctor doesn't think you're going to survive. Who on this family tree would you want to represent you? That's the way you say it. That's what you do. They will look at you and they will put their finger on that person in that drawing and say, this is who I want to be my power of attorney for my health care. That's why I say, and this is why I teach you to say, okay, what if that person is on the table with you? Who else would you want? And they will pick that person out on that family tree. The family tree is not there just for entertainment, although I get a lot of fun now looking at it, because there's so many different variations of it. But all you're doing is helping them come to the conclusion of who they want. The software is attorney-written software. It's called Decision Tree Programming. And it knows the appropriate questions to ask. It just does not know the answers. You have to put in the answers to the question. That's not practicing law. So there are some restrictions. Look down here at number 7 in little tiny print, but let's look at number 6 first. Permitted uses. You agree that you will use the self-help software and website solely for the purpose of accessing and using the do-it-yourself estate planning legal forms. That's what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you might get in trouble. There's some restrictions. Any replication of any aspect of the website or software for your gain or the gain of any third party or for any use of a competitive nature is strictly prohibited. Under no circumstances are you permitted to use the software or website to your advantage. All you have to do is help your client answer the questions. That keeps you out of trouble. You understand number 8 and agree that you're not a law firm, and you're not an attorney, and that you do not provide legal advice or legal services. You are representing yourself or have retained your own attorney. You can tell people it's okay to take this to an attorney. Attorneys can't find anything wrong with it. And you have the right to establish and build your own estate plan. And if you're out selling something like, let me do this for you, that's not quite right. Let me help you do it. I can coach you if you want help. But I'm not an attorney, and I'm not creating the document. Those are the only 2 specifications you need to walk. The other thing though is you have to know if you're using the right product. So I'm telling you, if you do page 3, it'll tell you in most cases whether you're using the right product. If the total number down there at the bottom, after you add up their bank accounts and their money markets and their annuities and their life insurance and their non-qualified accounts and their IRAs and their 401ks, if it's not over $5 million, man, you're home free. If it's between 5 and 15 million, you might need to use the AB trust. Use the AB trust if you think that the tax law is going to go down. You're okay. But if you do an estate plan, you look at them and go, hey, this guy invented the moonwalk, and he's got $50 million coming in every day because his songs are wonderful. Maybe you might not want to use just a standard revocable trust. You might want to use some of the other trusts that we've talked about, maybe even an asset protection trust. So anyway, I need you all to look at your EULA agreements, both of them. I need you to read them. And I need to get over to that other page here a minute. So there I go. Hey, I did it. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the page.
Screen share button, new share.
New share?
Yeah,
Okay,
you want
wait
to
a
go
minute.
back to the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I got to go back.
Okay, so screen share button, new share, select the PowerPoint.
Okay, screen, new share?
Yeah.
New share.
Select the PowerPoint.
Select the PowerPoint. Hey, folks, everybody needs Lisa. Don't run around without Lisa.
Great, you've got it. You've got it, Randall. I can see it.
Okay. All right. So anyway, let me just ask you a question, because some people that are on here today are not licensees, and that's okay. You're welcome. I encourage you to come in. Have you considered the opportunity, the value of adding estate planning conversations to your portfolio? Some of you have got the license, but you haven't really considered the opportunity. You haven't said, what is the true value of what I'm about to do? There's people that have bought the license and never touched it for a year, which makes me want to take my hand and bump it against my forehead and going, what is that all about? Okay, so and I think that the real issue is that those people have not considered what the opportunity is. If you can make an investment that you can get your return on your investment in the first sale, plus the back end, folks, that's a pretty good deal. But anyway, the value of adding estate planning conversations to your portfolio, have you ever thought about what the value of that is? I can tell you right now, it averages for me over the past 3 or 4 years to probably greater than $500,000 a year. And I'm not a multimillionaire, but that's kind of nice. I like that. You might like it too. But you have to consider what the opportunity is. Okay, I'm going over to the next page again. There it is. Okay. So the next question is, have you considered the cost of not adding estate planning conversations to your client first interviews and future annual reviews? You folks that do the infinite banking, or you folks that do the index and life insurance, and that's all you do, or you do the Medicare. Uh, it's okay to be a product salesman, but why not learn a process that if you add the conversation about estate planning to your first interviews or your annual reviews, how many different directions can you go in? You can use your infinite banking. You can use your index life insurance. You can use your Medicare contracts. People are really looking to cut down on the number of salespeople that they have coming into their home. Did you know that? They just as soon go to one person that they know, like, and trust, and get as much of it as they can. I don't do Medicare. I'm not very good at Medicare. So I'll be honest with you. I love my friend that's in the office there with me, Ray Wells, because he's a Medicare guide. And when I have a client with Medicare, I'll go, hey, you need to talk to my friend Ray Wells. And that's okay, because he likes to do that. Okay. So if I become a good referral source, maybe Ray can become a good referral source. So the next thing is, have you considered adding $1,200 of earnings to each of your existing clients' payable on or near the 10th of each month based on the current month's production? 4 or 5 estate plans a month, 3 estate plans a month, 2 estate plans a month. 2 estate plans a month, that's $2,400. That's lunch money, gas money, and rent for your office. And that makes your back end sale almost pure profit. And I think that's, the way most people run their estate planning businesses, although it's really possible to have a sales crew that might do 15 or 20 or 30 estate plans a month. And if you use the entry level people that are not licensed for the software, and you have a crew of them out there bringing those people in and saying the same thing, they say the same thing you say. Hey, I think you'd benefit from a conversation about your current estate plan. You don't have to be insurance licensed for that. You don't have to be licensed for anything. You have to have, you have to be trained to say it. And you have to not practice law, and you have to not create the document. Have you considered the back-end sale commissions that average between $5,000 and $20,000 per case? Folks, I've shown it to you over and over and over. If you find somebody with a $1,000 gap, and I'll be honest with you, today on the phone, I talked to one of my clients, and I asked him how much money he needed this year above what he produces, and he said, I need $40,000. And I said, okay. And I looked at his income rider stuff, and I said, remember when I first met you, I told you, we need to build this thing. Right now, your income riders will pay you about $18,000 a year. So you're still going to have to come up with $22,000. He said, okay, I'll pull down my stocks, but I need to build that up a little higher, don't I? I said, yeah. And he said, well, can I put another $25,000 in? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, by the way, if I put that $25,000 in before February 22nd, American Equity will give me an additional 10% bonus on that money, won't they? Yep. So before I put down my 5th cup of coffee this morning, I won't say my 2nd cup of coffee, I'd already filled out the paperwork and mailed it to him to move $25,000 at 6%. That's 1,200. That's 50. I made $1,500 before mid morning this morning. And that's a future sale. That's something that we discussed a year or so ago. Okay. So if you're doing estate planning and they understand what their income is, they understand what their assets are, and they're looking into the future, they will take care of themselves. So the next question is, have you considered the fact that your business is at risk if you do not add? Ooh, I left a D off of my ad. Have you considered the fact that your business is at risk if you do not add estate planning to your product mix? Now, you have to understand what a product mix is. Um, General Motors has a product mix of a whole bunch of different types of cars. I have a product mix of my estate plans and my life insurance products and my annuity products and my assets under management products and my long-term care products and my health insurance. If I sell, I don't sell a lot of it, but I have a health insurance license. That's my product mix. But if you have a product mix that's not tied together with one go-to sales presentation that opens the door to all of them, you're using a lot of wasted energy. Promise you, you're using a lot of wasted energy. So let me just ask you this question. Do you have a game plan for implementation? And a lot of you have heard me say this, my key word for 2024 is implementation. And that leads to momentum. And if you want to have a structured implementation project that leads to momentum, we have that built in. We call it the cycle of success. Some of you ride the cycle of success like a wild bucking bronco, and it throws you off because you don't control it. But if you control the cycle of success, it provides the ability to measure success and to identify issues that need improvement. You can do that with a conversation from a third party who can look at it and say, okay, you seem to be having a problem on your ability to identify people who would benefit from a conversation with you about estate planning. Or you might come back and say, you seem to have a problem in convincing people to have that conversation with you. And all you have to do to fix that is tell them, hey, if you have that conversation, you might learn something you weren't aware of. And they might say, oh, I already have a trust. Great. Let's make sure that it's properly funded. So, that's the cycle of success. That's, once they go in and agree to talk to you about that and they're not a suspect anymore, they're a prospect. Once they agree to do, if you go in and say, well, what am I going to talk about? If you do the family tree asset positioning go-to first interview and hand them the agenda, they will follow you all the way to the end. Because as soon as you hand them that agenda, they're going to realize that you're good. You're good at this. Or they might go, oh my God, this guy's a pro. Or this lady's a pro. And that they're going to come to the conclusion that, oh my gosh, I've always wanted somebody to guide me through this conversation. I've always wanted to have this conversation with my spouse. I didn't know how to do it. And I've run into somebody now that's got me and my spouse talking about issues that we have not been able to talk about and didn't know how. That's the cycle of success. You already know what you want to accomplish, and you know that you've got a process that will lead your prospects up to that point of decision, and that they will make the decision that's best for them. Hey, Law, that's one of the easiest things I ever thought of in my whole life. So, it's what I know. It's what I do. It's what I teach. I teach it because it works. So if you emulate the cycle of success and understanding all the different trust options that people have, you can eliminate most of those trust options by following the sales presentation and make an easy transfer over to page 3 where you list their assets. And you don't have to be exact. You just want a ballpark. If you want to do a ballpark, it's okay if you miss it by $1 million. But if you see that it's somewhere between 12 and 20 million, you need to think about what you're selling. And you need to look at them and you need to say, you know, you've done a real good job with your assets, but I need to do some research and I need to run some numbers. When you come back in, do you want to see your numbers? And let's look at it because well, we're going to get to it in a minute. Here's something I just want you to know. Because of this information that I've given you this morning, if you're not earning a minimum of $20,000 a month and you want to learn how using the system I teach, you want to be trained. I meant that's trained. Sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning is not a good thing to type on. But anyway, you want to be trained and coached in the Family Tree Asset Positioning Go-To First Interview. That, my friends, will turn you into an unstoppable professional that people will admire and be amazed at your ability to guide people through that conversation. My God, that's good training. Okay. So if you do this, what are you going to learn? You're going to learn to use the agenda. You learn to use the confidential. You're going to learn to use the script. You're going to learn the power phrases. Look at those kids playing out there. You'll learn to be a better advisor by becoming aware of the family dynamics of your prospect. And your prospect will look at you and go, wow, this guy's good. If you understand the different types of trust and do the agenda correctly and use the confidential and use the sales presentation, you will learn how to make a proper diagnosis of what the client wants and needs. You might get to a point if they're over $5 to $10 million, you might say, I think we probably need to make some decisions on the type of trust that you might want. And we might go to one of our local attorneys, Courtney or somebody like that. And we might tell them, and Courtney might say, yeah, this is what you need to do. Or you might need to go to a tax attorney, because of the estate. You might need to go to an elder care attorney if that's what you want. You need to know when you need to pull in an attorney, and you need to know when you don't need to pull in an attorney. You're going to make a lot of money if you know when you don't need to pull one in. And you'll learn how to make the proper prescription. That's what I call it, by presenting the correct financial products on an individual basis. If you're a one product salesperson and all you can do is go out and say, buy this one product, you're a product salesman. I'm not going to say you're just a product salesman because you may be doing very well with it, but you're a product salesman. And you're walking away from so much money that you are not even aware of how much money you're walking away from. And if you do the family tree and understand the different types of trust, you'll learn to represent your clients and not the product providers. I don't give a flip about the companies. They're immortal. They're going to be here when I'm gone. They're going to find lots of people like you and me to sell their products. But your clients want to know that you represent them and not that company. And you cannot represent them if you don't understand the family dynamics. So, again, this is what I know. It's what I do. This is what I teach. I don't know how to, I don't want to learn anything else. I don't want to paraphrase an old TV ad, what's in your wallet? And if you're sitting there going, gosh, I'd really like to make some money, the Cycle of Success will be your guide to having the income you want and deserve. So how much is that? And that income that we're talking about, is it a wish? Is it a dream? Is it a goal? Is it a business plan? What is it? If it's a wish, good luck. That's up to you. So here's what I want to work with: financial professionals who want to work a plan. That's who I'm looking for. If you want to just come in and hang out and don't want to work a plan, that's okay. I'll be your friend. But, I'm going to encourage you to follow Cycle of Success because the wish, the dream, the goal will come true if you emulate before you innovate. There's an N missing there. But you need to emulate. There's that N. I found it. Okay. Very few licensees who innovate have the same income ranges for those who emulate. And then, folks, I said it to you last week. If you're changing the process, and when I look at who you are and I find out you've changed the process, what I also find out is your income is lower than those who do not innovate. If you emulate, the folks that are at the top of the list are emulating. They're not innovating. And if you're innovating, I already know where you are in the production chart. Incorporating existing bad habits and existing product approaches are not the solution. You need to get rid of that. So knowing what you need to know about trust, if you follow cycle success process, it will correct bad habits and it will correct poor product approaches that plague the incomes of most financial professionals. If you're struggling on income, it's probably not the product's fault. It's your mindset. We've talked about that before. So anyway, it did for me. Cycle success worked for me. It will for you. So I just asked you the question. I'm sitting there going, follow this trail, follow this yellow brick road. Are you the horse that comes to the trough and refuses to drink? Well, that's up to you. But you're not who I really want to work with. I want to work with the person that comes in and says, hey, I need to implement this. This is what I want to do. And those people will change their lives structurally. So as a teacher, I want to show you a better way. I only teach what I know, I only teach what I do. I don't want to learn what you're doing if you're doing it wrong. I don't want to do it your way. I want to learn from you too, but not your bad habits and misconceptions, but how to get you to correct those bad habits and launch a profitable career. So here's what I need you to do. Go to my website. There's 2 appointment buttons on there. Pick the one that best fits your current need. We can discuss training and coaching. It's a no-brainer. Some of you don't need to be trained. Some of you just need to be coached. Some of you don't need to be trained and hardly coached at all. You just need to be shown a little bit, tweaking the way things work. And that's okay. You saw this screen before. But, learn about the different types of trusts. Be aware that there are other entities and animals out there besides the revocable trusts that have a particular spot in the marketplace. Okay, now you've just seen what I know and what I do, and this is my other mantra is let me teach you how to hunt. And sometimes the biggest thing that stops people from becoming a licensee, their biggest question is, do you provide leads? Okay, no, I don't. I will teach you how to develop the leads either at zero cost or up to $3,000 or $4,000 a month if that's what you want. I will teach you how to do that. I will not provide it for you. I'm not in the business of doing that. I'm in the business of teaching you what to say. And if you have any clients at all, even if you've only been in the business 6 months and only have 10 clients, that's a perfect starting spot. So anyway, I want independent agents that want to follow the either want to go into the entry level estate planning, into estate planning licensee with insurance license, or a master licensee with a downline, or wanting to build one, or currently building agencies all over the United States. And those are called IMOs. Self-driven is a whole lot better than pull them out of bed and kick them in the butt. So anyway, I want to thank you for the time. I'll go ahead and open it up for sharing if I can here. Lisa, do you want to go ahead and open them up and let them raise their hands and ask questions, or are there any questions?
There's some questions in the chat.
Okay.
The first one is, would you be willing to go through an example of a trust that you set up showing assets and the process of how you did it?
Of course I would. But I will tell you this, if you have an insurance license, you've already told the state you live in that you know how to do that. But at the same time, you have to review each and every asset, because one of the mottos of my company is called finding your true purpose for money. And when you set up an estate plan and you pick the people that you want to represent you, and you find out who you want to leave these assets to, that is finding your true purpose for money. But it's not all of it, because maybe you want some of the money for yourself so you can go squander at the beach and have a good time. It's okay. So yeah, if you have a particular situation, or you want to send me the confidential and schedule an appointment with me, I will do that. As far as me just making something up and showing you how to do that, uh, I stay pretty busy. I would rather help you do one that you went in and already had done at page 3. If you've done to page 3, I'll help you. If you want me to teach you how to do what you do with page 3, and if you have not accomplished stage 1, I'm not really interested in showing you what to do on page 3 if you haven't done the first stage, because that's not where you need to focus. What I have learned is that people focus on whatever the next step is the hardest. And if you're struggling with income and don't have any suspects, it won't do me any good to spend time teaching you what to do on page 3. And that's just the honest truth. And I'm not saying that's who you are. I don't even know who asked the question, but yes, I'll be more than happy to help. We can do a hypothetical if you want to. If that's what you all want is a hypothetical, you can go to randallbaxter.com and look at my sales presentation, and look at how we talk about in the sales presentation the question about their long-term care, what to do with their real estate, what to do with their income, what their current health status is, and over to page 3 about how much money they have in the bank, and whether they have money markets and annuities, and what type of annuities those are, and who the beneficiaries on those annuities are, and whether you have a 401k and an IRA, whether you're contributing to it, and if you wanted to do a Roth account, that's okay too. So don't let not knowing what to do stop you from getting yourself up to that point. Any other questions?
Lonnie says, what is the downside of setting up an AB trust? Who would be a person that would complain if the surviving spouse does not create the B trust?
Okay. First of all, you have to understand why. The only reason you would do the AB trust is to prevent some of the federal state taxes from having to be paid. So why would anybody complain about that if their estates are over 15 million? You would want the AB trust. So I don't understand. Read the question to me again.
What is the downside of setting up the AB trust? Who would be the person that would complain if the surviving spouse does not create the B trust?
Who would be the person? I don't think anybody would complain if they needed the AB trust and you help them set it up. There's no complaint there. Why would the beneficiaries complain? It puts more money in their pocket. Why would the spouse complain? It preserves more money for them to live on the rest of their lives when they've got a deceased spouse. There's no reason, if it's done right, to have a complaint. Does that make sense? Lonnie, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I don't think there would be a complaint if it's done right. Go ahead. Next question.
Then, so estate docs can create all these type of trusts?
No. Family estate docs has a lot of the things already built into it. But there's some things it cannot create an ILIT, which is an irrevocable life insurance trust. Okay, it cannot do an asset protection trust. It can do a spendthrift. It can do a disabled child. It can do a lot of these things. But no, if you think it can do everything, it cannot do everything. It's designed for middle America. It is not designed for the people out there on the Cape Cod. Does that answer that question? I hope so. Folks, I will tell you that if they lower the estate tax, the irrevocable life insurance trust is going to come back in style. And an irrevocable life insurance trust is a separate trust that you can have in conjunction with a revocable trust. And the purpose of it is to put a life insurance policy in there. And let's say that you have a $20 million estate, and I'm just making these numbers up. Let's say you got a $5 million estate tax. And they've got this problem in Yellowstone, if you're watching Yellowstone. Okay. But they've got this huge estate tax that's going to come due that when Kevin Costner dies, they're going to lose all that land, and he's got a colon cancer, and he can't get more life insurance. So it could be that the only way for him to preserve that estate is to do some kind of charitable remainder trust and get that out of his estate before he dies, so that all those Indians can live on that ranch again, and his family can still have the benefit of the use of it. I don't know. I haven't seen the ending of it, but it's starting to make sense to me exactly what he needs to do. I'd call him, but he probably wouldn't talk to me because he'd think I'm just a peasant. But an attorney might go in and fix that. But the purpose of the irrevocable life insurance trust is if you know you have a $5 million tax bill, and you write a life insurance policy for $5 million and put it in that irrevocable trust with a different Social Security number, and when you die, that trust gets $5 million inside the trust. And then your trustee takes that $5 million and buys assets from your estate for $5 million. And then they move those assets into the irrevocable life insurance trust. They give the $5 million to the federal government, and the beneficiaries of the irrevocable life insurance trust are the same people that are the beneficiaries of the revocable trust. So they get their assets back and they pay the tax bill. Isn't that cool? It's a $5 million life insurance policy. And a term policy won't work most of the time. Plus, we can show you banks that will lend that trust the money to buy that policy. And they will up the death benefit for the amount of the loan. And that's what wealthy people do. They go in, they take out a loan, they buy a life insurance policy with it. They use that. When they die, they pay off, they buy their assets that are in their trust for whatever it is. They give the federal government the money, and then they give their assets back to the kids and say, there you go. We're smart, aren't we? So will your revocable trust do that? No. Next question.
So Susan asks, when does the $200 change occur through estate docs?
When is the $200? I don't know what you're talking about.
Per change, I think it means $200 per change.
Oh, okay. That's if your software doesn't answer a question and you present the question to me, and I go to Frank Divers and I'll say, Frank, we need it to be worded a certain way. He'll say, yes, we can do that, but it has to be manually done. And that's where they charge about $200 to make those types of changes. Next question.
Okay. How do you complete a restatement?
That's a great question. How do you complete a restatement? First of all, you need to know what a restatement is. And a restatement is when you take an existing trust and make changes in it without doing amendments. Now, there's a restatement and there's an amendment. If you do an amendment, you go in and let's say that in a trust, you've got section 4.2. And that's the only thing you want to change. Well, you can do an amendment and you can go in and say 4.2 says the sky is blue, but we want to change 4.2 to say the sky is red. And that's an amendment. To do a restatement, you're going in and changing the whole trust. even though you're only changing 4.2. So what you do is a restatement of the existing trust, and you only go in and change 4.2. It's not an amendment, it's a restatement of the whole trust. And you get to, you need to tell me that it's a restatement. And I'll tell Frank Divers over at Estate Docs Pro that this is a restatement, and either Frank or Dean Martin will go in and punch a button that says this is a restatement. And when the new trust is printed out, it'll say, "Hey, this is the John Brown Trust dated August 1, 1948. Same trust. We're doing a restatement of this old trust, and we're changing section 4.2. And then you don't have to move any deeds because everything's already properly funded. You can do a restatement of an older existing trust. And if you do a restatement, you don't have to change any deeds or anything because it's still licensed or still in the name of the original trust. So a restatement needs to say it's a restatement. That way you know that the person actively made the changes in the trust before they passed away. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? I hope so. If not, you can re-ask it.
Okay, then coming back to AB trusts, Lonnie asks, so why would I not set up an AB even if the estate is under the exemption amount?
Because you don't need to. You just complicate something that can be simple. It's just a standard trust. You don't need to do it. Now, if you think that, why would you want to do it? This is a real question. If there was no need to do it. I don't know how that's the only way I know how to answer that. Next question.
Okay, there are no more questions in the chat. So, now Susan has just posted a question. So if the $200 per change is after everything is filed or before?
Most of the time, okay, all right. So the $200 has to be paid to the attorney who does it. Estate Docs Pro provides that $200. They provide that person to do it for you, and they charge you a fee, and they'll charge your credit card, and you can collect the $200 from the client. But it has to be prepaid. If it's a change that the software cannot do, but they know that they can do it, then that would be an amendment, and they would go in and not a restatement. So they would go in and amend a certain section. That's $200. If you do the restatement, you don't have to pay any fees. And Susan, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so then there are no more questions in the chat. So if anyone has a question, please raise a hand. Oh, and then Lonnie's just posted in the chat, because we believe the exemption is coming down, so we would not have to do an eventual reinstatement.
Okay, Lonnie, that's a good statement, but we believe it's coming down doesn't mean it has. You can set up an AB trust and buy, and as long as you're telling your prospect that you're doing this because you think it's coming down, you have just complicated their trust. And if it doesn't come down, you've complicated it with prematurely. And if you have sold them the license, and if you read your license agreement, when that tax law changes, they can go in and change their trust from a standard trust to an AB trust without any additional legal fees. They own that license to do that. That's the benefit, and that's the beauty of the contract that you have. Susan, what's your question? Next question.
So it's the same one. You mentioned in the presentation, you were talking about there's a $200 change per change, and that was before we were discussing restatements. So that's what my question was, is the $200 per change after everything's filed, or is it within the process while you're still working on it? Or
okay. So most of the time you'll find a problem while you're working on it.
right.
Okay. And if you find that problem, if we can't solve it with the decision tree programming, we submit that to the attorneys and they tell us how to solve it. And then if they have to reprogram it, there's a $200 fee if it's not in the basics of the program. It's rare, but I've probably done two, maybe three of them in the past 3 years, to maybe out of 160 trusts, maybe 170 trusts. It's rare. But it's good to know that if the family situation requires a piece of an amendment, that you can go in there and have it done. Now, can it happen later on? Yeah, it can happen because there could be a relationship change or an asset change or a health change that would require that amendment to be that's not in the decision tree. And it, like I said, Susan, it's very, very rare. If you have one, you ought to send it to me by email and we'll get it. We'll see what we need to do about it.
Okay. Oh, well, I was just wondering if that was something we need to prepare the client to understand
Of
as
course.
far as, yeah, okay.
Well, I don't think you need to talk about it in advance. But if you do the design right, it's going to come up before you issue the new state plan. It's going to come up. If I've charged $19.95 and it's a good client and it's going to cost $200, I don't say a word about it. I'll just pay the $200. If it's somebody that the changes are going on in their life that it's no fault of yours, you can look at them and say that's an amendment and that's $200. You don't have to apologize for that. They're going to be very, very happy that it's not $10,000 or $1,000.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Susan. Anything else?
If there are any questions, could you raise a hand?
Susan,
No,
your hand's
Randall, I
still
don't
up.
think there are any more questions.
Okay. So, all I can say to you says, okay. If you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I'll go to Frank. That's the beauty of this system is we have attorneys that we can go to. All they ask is that you go through the white label first because they think that maybe the white label is going to know the answer. I'll be honest with you. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you because my job is to make sure you get what you need. And if you ask me a question, if it's a legal question, we'll take it to the lawyer. And if the lawyer says we need to go in and change that trust on that one particular item and the software won't do it, we can do it manually and we'll take care of it. And that'll be $200, please. And then you would decide if you pay it or the client pays it. The client will pay it. I promise you, the client will pay it. Or you might go to one of your local attorneys and say, hey, I just want an amendment done on this one section. And the attorney might do the amendment for you. They might do it because they like you and do it for free, but I don't think they will. Anything else? Well, I guess we need to pick a topic for next week. I'll take suggestions. Y'all can email them in. I think I've got a couple of ideas that I think we need to share and talk about. But other than that, is it time to say goodbye? Sounds like it. I want to tell you thank you for your
Randall,
time. Yes,
Lonnie says he'll give you a call.
he will.
Yes.
All right, Lonnie, you give me a call. You might need to wait a while because I don't know where my phone is. I think it's out in my car. So I might have to go find my phone. But give me a few minutes on that. All right, and if you call and I don't answer it, I'll call you right back. It's been a busy day. I've been outside in the trying to get the battery on my truck going, and I had to go buy some jumper cables because my jumper cables were inside the bottom of my truck. The bottom of the truck had 18 inches of snow on top of it, and I couldn't get it open. So it's been a crazy day. All right. Hey, I had fun today. I hope you learned something, and we'll talk to
Chris
you
and
again
Max
next week.
say thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. You guys take care. I'm signing off. Take care.